All right. Good morning. How are y'all doing this morning? My name is Andrew Jones, and I am the director of students and children here at Morningstar Church. I'm really excited to talk to you all this morning about sticky faith. That wasn't me. Okay. And sticky faith is about practical ideas to nurture a long-term faith. Recently, I went to some training on my path to becoming an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church, which is exciting stuff. And one of the first things they wanted to do was evaluate me psychologically. Now, they assured me they do this with everybody, okay? It wasn't just me. And I said, I've got some family history of mental illness and things like that. And they said, but you're going to youth ministry, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, that's a prerequisite. You're good. Okay, so one of the questions they asked me was, this is kind of like is this true of you or not true of you? My table manners are not quite as good as home as when I'm out in company. And so when I looked at that question, I thought, it's not really fair because my mom, I have two loving, wonderful parents. And my mom would say to me, before we would go anywhere, say, Andy, I love you very much, but still help me God. If you embarrass this family. So obviously my table manners are much better when I'm out in company than they are at home. But when we would go out for family outings at Thanksgiving, we had this kind of tradition of, we had a big adult table. That's like the whole family getting together, right? You had this big adult table and everybody was there. And then the kids would get their own special table. And that's kind of how it was presented to us. It was very exciting, right? You get your own special table in the basement. Where there's no carpeting. Don't get me wrong, they loved us, but there's no carpeting. You get your own special plates and spoons and forks. Yes, they're plastic. Because after the Thanksgiving of 1982, they said no more silverware for the children. And this is kind of a lot of times we want to give children their own special sacred place, right? And sometimes we think about, I'm kind of making a joke that like it's a bad thing. We had a card table, we had folding chairs, right? And plastic forks and silverware and things like that. But the children's table has gotten to be really cool recently. Have you ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese? It's amazing. It's a place where a kid can be a kid, and it's like the best place ever, unless you're an adult. Have you ever been to like a place called Pump It Up, where they have all these huge inflatables where kids to go play? They've redesigned that, and the church has done a great job of doing some of the same things. We've themed out our children's area, and that's a great thing. We've made church an exciting place to be for kids. And as special and as important that is, and we're getting more kids to come, and they say that 64% of people who are going to make a profession of faith do so before their 18th birthday. Here's another truth that we're dealing with. 40 to 50% of kids who graduate from church or youth group will fail to stick with their faith in college. So on our campus last weekend, between our youth fall kickoff and our weekend's children's ministry, we had about 650 kids on our campus. Now, if we were going to take those kids and play kickball, it'd be a big game of kickball, right? We were going to take those kids and play kickball and choose teams. That's like 325 people. And that's 325 people that we would have to say, hey, these folks, after they leave here, they're not going to come back. That's the tough news. The good news is that we can do something about that. The good news is that we can be intentional and we can have some strategies that keep that from happening. And we're already on our way to do those things. we've talked a lot about orange, and orange is still something we're doing. I realize I'm not wearing orange, and that frightens some people. Like, he doesn't have any orange on. What's going on with orange? Are we still doing orange? I do want to point out, though, that my shirt matches all the tablecloths and all the colors of my presentation. So when you're doing your evaluation later, keep that in mind. But orange is something that we're doing as a piece of a bigger picture. In Luke 9:47, Jesus said, "Then he said to them, 'Whoever welcomes this little child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. For it is the one who is least among you all who is greatest.'" The disciples were asking, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? This is Jesus' response. Jesus had this unique way of always expanding the circle when it came to the Jewish law. He would say, "You've heard it said, do not murder. I say, if you call your brother a fool and demean your brother, that's like murder." And they had heard it said, "Raise your child up the way that he should go." That's the philosophy of our Orange Ministry. We're going to still partner with families. That's the most important influence in a child's life. But Jesus says, whoever welcomes a child. And what we're trying to, what I want to communicate to you is that you are, whether you have children or not, whether your children are in children's ministry or not, whether you have children and students or folks in students ministry or not, you are still the whoever. We need the entire church, the intergenerational church, to walk with and raise up our students and children. Amen. Jesus set the bar high, as he was in the habit of doing. So currently, we have what's called a 1-to-5 model, and not necessarily always 5 kids. Sometimes we have, different rooms have different ratios, different situations. We have sometimes more kids to one adult, but we typically have, we got one adult who's talking to 5, 6, 8, 10 kids, right? And that one person is feeding in to those students. That's one influence on each of those students' life, and it's divided 5 ways. And that's a good thing that we do that. That's what we do in our weekend ministry at certain times. That's what we do in our student ministry at certain times. But if we're going to reach students, we kind of, on an intergenerational level, to have lifelong faith, we need to up the ante. Unless we're satisfied with 50% of them leaving, we need to change course a little bit. Paul would always get so frustrated with these people called the Corinthians. If you ever read the book of 1st or 2nd Corinthians, you're going to find out that's the church you don't want to be. And one of his complaints was, "I give you milk, not solid food, for you're not yet ready for it. Indeed, you are still not ready." And I put this in here because we kind of assume that kids are going to show up, come to the kids' table for a while, sit in the auditorium for a few years, and then they'll be ready. But if you have ever had a small baby or have ever taken care of a small baby, you know that you introduce solid food with intent. You have to teach children to chew, swallow, and digest. It's not something you kind of just say, "Okay, well, let's just start giving them pizza." Milk, pizza. Pizza's got all the 4 food groups. I try to convince my wife of this all the time. You've got to be intentional about it. There's got to be a way that you introduce these things and a method. In fact, so many people have so many different ways of telling you how to do it. "Oh, just put a little rice in the bottle." "Oh, no, don't do that. You got to mix it separately." I remember when we were first raising our kids, we had no idea what to do. And it sounded like every time someone told us one thing and somebody else told us the exact opposite. It was so crazy. But here's the way we do this for our students and children. And that's, instead of having a 1-to-5 ratio, we need to have a 5-to-1 ratio. 5 adults building into every student. I know what you're thinking right now, especially my children's folks. That's a lot of volunteers. The good news, we have 18 years to figure this out. We have 18 years to develop these people to get 5 different influences in their lives. So from the time that they're born to the time they're 18, we need to have 5 people who are going to influence them and show them the faith. So we start this in our children's ministry, right? And this is where our adults lead and guide. This is where we're feeding. This is where we're spoon feeding in some ways. Here's where they get the milk. This is where, we're intentionally teaching them and showing them a word, but we're also starting to teach the chewing and the swallowing and the digesting. We're transitioning them to telling stories into, hey, here's the Bible. There's pages in it. You can find these books, these stories here. Let's look them up together. Let's process what that means. We hope to teach them the beginnings of spiritual discipline so they know how to do this. And we have some great folks who do that. And we have some great adults like Miss Daisy and Mr. Mike who are building into our children right now. And they're faithful and committed to stepping up and being those people. And then they move on to student ministry. And if children's ministry is about leading and teaching, student ministry is about guiding. This is where we explore with students, and we're pushing them in a certain direction. And I've got some great volunteers in our student ministry who are willing to do that. And the reason that student ministry is still important, not just because I need a job and my kids need food, but it's because there's certain topics we don't want to talk about with grandma in the room. I mean, kids are interested in sex, but as far as their parents are concerned, they just assume believe in the stork, okay? So we want to talk about things like sex and Snapchat. If you know what Snapchat is and you're a parent, you come talk to me later on. These social media, what does it mean, bullying, all this type of things. These are things they want to process together. So student ministry is very important. That's where adults can have influence to help guide students to make better decisions and help them gain their independence in doing that. Intergenerational worship. What the heck is that? I actually had someone, I talked about that concept with somebody, and they said, what do you mean intergenerational worship? I said, well, that's where Pastor Mike gets up and talks, and we have music, and it's every Sunday morning and Saturday night. And they said, oh, you mean adult service? I'm here to tell you that there's a reason we don't have stuff for middle school and high school students on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings. They need to see adults worshiping. They need to see it happen. And I want to let you know, I'm very proud of our pastor who will speak to our students and have messages that he considers where they fit in whatever topic he's preaching about. It's an honor to serve on a staff like that, where our pastor cares about our students and children and wants to make sure that he's having an influence in their lives that way. This is where adults get to show what it is to be a Christian. They're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who is going to demonstrate for them, this is how we live out the Christian life. But it happens more than just on Saturday night and Sunday morning, because they're going to see you guys in the community. And you better still reflect the values that you had those days throughout the week. So no matter what you do, as far as serving in Morning Star, you're still a part of this intergenerational plan to reach our students and children. And how you act at all times is very important to that aspect. Service ministry. I got some great, exciting news about student serving. About 50% of our children's ministry is staffed by our middle school and high school students. And those middle school and high school students are investing in our children. That's a great thing. But they also need those adult mentors. Our serving students need those adult mentors to show them how to serve. When kids are acting whiny, Our middle school and high school students don't have the tolerance that our adults do. So, seriously. We need people to show them how to love and show them how to serve and walk with them in that. And guide them and mentor them in those things. Mission and outreach opportunities. Our students are so excited about mission and outreach opportunities. We are limited in our mission and outreach opportunities not because of the number of students who want to participate, but rather because of the number of adults who want to help make those events happen. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just saying that if we had more opportunities and more adults, we would never be able to fill it. Kids want to know that their faith has a purpose. And here's where adults get to co-labor with our students. They get to do the same things. Sometimes adults go on these trips with us. We go to Kansas City, we go to East St. Louis. We do stuff at Serve Day in Hidden Valley. And they're like, I'm not sure if I can. It's okay. They're working with you. They know that. They want to be equals here. This is where kids get to see that they have responsibility and they can be treated and have the same expectations as they will when they're adults. So we're moving from a 1 to 5 model where we have one person speaking in the lives of students to every person in our congregation having an opportunity to grow the church, have an opportunity to build the church. So we have fully devoted followers who will stick with their faith beyond their high school and college years. 1 Peter 4:17 refers to the church as God's household. We always hear these analogies that the church is the body of Christ. It's the family of God. We talk about the church being the family of God. That means we take care of each other. So when we see the church as God's household, that means that we're the whoever. Everyone has a responsibility here to build into our students and children. So here's the Thanksgiving table that the adults sit at. Now, I have years of experience with children and students, so they still make me sit with those people. But I had someone take a picture of this for me. We need to figure out a way to get some more placemats and get some nice dishes and find a place for students to sit at that table. In another gospel, when the disciples ask, who's the greatest? Here's how Jesus responds. He called a child who he put among them and said, I tell you truly, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. When the disciples looked at the kids, and the kids would come running toward Jesus, they were like, whoa, 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 stop. We've got a kids' table over here. Children are to be seen but not heard. You guys need to kind of take a hike. And Jesus would welcome them because when the disciples saw this annoyance, this problem of the kids getting in the way, Jesus saw eternal potential. He looked at them and he saw that this is the stuff I can make bricks out of. This is the stuff, these are building materials. You hear the work that's being done over there. This is the stuff that I'm going to use to build my kingdom. So whether we say it's sticky faith, whether we say it's orange, we all have this opportunity to build the kingdom. And all the statistics suggest that the best time to use those materials is not when it hardens, but this time between birth and 18 years old. These are the greatest opportunities. That's why I love what I do. That's why I never want to, pardon the phrase, and people have asked me this many times, be a real pastor. People say this to me all the time. And I don't mean that as a joke. Because, and I don't mean that to step on anybody's toes, because I could not do what I do without someone who's supportive and understands and gets it like Pastor Mike or Pastor Allen. So I don't say that as a criticism, but people are like, when have you ever become a real pastor? I love what I do. I love what I do. And I want you guys to be a part of it and love it too. Even if you're serving in hospitality, you have an opportunity to build in the students. If you're at the Java bar, you have an opportunity to build in the students. If you're in the parking lot, if you're an usher greeter, anything you do, you're gonna interact with kids. And how you do that's important. And some people, like, man, I really love to see young people around the church. How do we make that happen? And we could have great youth programs and great children's programs, which we do. And we could do a lot of innovative stuff and have loud music, which we do. But a lot of it's also to do with when you see those folks, you can talk to them. You can ask them your name. You can tell them your name. Let them know that you care that they're here. So it goes back to the very first question that was asked on my psychological inventory, which I have not received the results from yet. My table manners are not quite as good at home as when I'm out in company. How do we help our students, when they leave here, have the same table manners as they had when they were with us? How do we get them to go out and get involved in a church once they leave their home, when they go to college, when they go out to get a job? How do we keep them connected to their faith? Because the truth is that 33% of kids who grow up in church, when asked to explain the gospel, don't use the word Jesus. And to kind of riff off what Matt talked about earlier, some of them are sitting in that sin management chair like, okay, I'm just gonna be a good person and I can do this. Because that's what they saw. How do we get them to continue their faith in such a way that it's important to them? That's their life. And they continue on that journey, continue taking next steps. So instead of rhetorically asking the questions, if you'll look on your table, there are a series of 4 questions. It says action points. Okay, and what we would like for you to do is take those either at your table, there's enough where you could split your table in 2 if you have 8 folks at this table, and discuss those questions. Oh, that's fancy. In what ways does Morningstar have separate kids' tables and adult tables? How can we include students and children while meeting their needs? What are the advantages of trying to surround each kid with 5 adults who care about them? What are the costs? In your role at Morningstar, how can you help build into the lives of students and children? And finally, what current events, rituals, or worship services does your ministry offer that could be infused with a 5-to-1 flavor? This is time for you guys to discuss that. We are going to share in a few moments, so talk about those things. And I don't know if the other presenters did this, but I got books to give away if you share. Just telling you, okay? So take some time to discuss that, all right, and we'll come back to you here in a moment.